This is your herbs and seasoning course, a continuation of part one of home gardening. And we say we're going to review some of what we have done before simply because it's the prerequisite to doing the seasonings course. And maybe 70% of you on set right now were not part of that course. So I'm quickly reviewing some of that before we go into pure herbs and seasonings. I want to remind our viewers this is not about health and healing course. This is about herbs and seasonings. Okay, a continuation of home gardening, what you can do at home. And I said we are going to cover planning, design, and layout. We're going to do some things on container planting, choosing your herbs and seasonings, management practices, which would include fertilizing, pruning, watering, pest and disease control, and home garden safety. So in our first slide, we are saying, as you choose a location, walk around your space. Choose a site based on sunlight. You want a maximum of 6 hours. If you have more than 6 hours, like some places may have 8 hours of sunlight, you don't want that amount. The plant would begin to die. Let me reiterate that most herbs and seasonings that are used are plants that were developed in the Mediterranean world. They tend to be very fragrant. They carry a lot of essential oils, and therefore it gives us flavors for meals, and in some cases, they have healing properties. In this course, I am not going to deal with the healing properties of herbs and seasonings. I'm going to deal with the agronomy. How do you grow it successfully? And I'm saying a maximum of 6 hours. Your water must be reliable and clean. So if you don't have regular supplies of water, I recommend you don't use the canal water. Be careful about the source of your water because you're going to be consuming a lot of the leafy materials from this plant. And you could be putting toxins into your body that you don't have a clue about simply because somebody up the road let out some waste engine oil, or they have some pesticides they want to get rid of and they pour it down the drain. You would be putting that into your plant. Be careful and be on the alert that this is what happens in a lot of cases around Trinidad and Tobago. So you want clean water, shade. Note that heavy shade produces poor plants. So you don't want the place to be too shaded, but you don't want too much sunlight. Wind is good. Good air circulation reduces pests and diseases. Particularly for these herbs, you get fungal diseases. You do not get much insects simply because the essential oils keep away the insects. In fact, you would find out that most of these herbs you use, if you have them in pots, you can put them in your kitchen, on your living room, once you have some sunlight, and it keeps away the insects. They act as natural insect repellents. I want to tell you that you should choose herbs that you would like. Don't go choose a herb because I call the name. You want to choose a herb because it's a herb you like, you smell it before, you like the smell, and you want to try it out. And you want to grow it so you could continue using it. More than everything else, keep a journal. A journal tells you this is where you got your seed, or this is where you got the plant. The plant was already 6 months old, right? You got it from Jenny's store, and that record helps you down the road. You could go back to Jenny and say, you know, I forgot the name of the plant I bought. Was that basil, or was it sage, or was it dill? What am I supposed to see? I can't remember from the course because each plant does something different. Okay, so keep a journal. Your design and layout, I have called in the last course for a simple sketch plan of the area showing all the relevant bits, your house, the fence, you have plants, you have open spaces, and what are your boundaries. It helps me as if I were there to assess what you're doing. So I am responding to you on an individual basis. I'm taking time to review what you sent to me and giving you comments to improve what you're doing without me visiting. We want you to estimate and consider your available space, including walk-in space. I see people plant and they don't leave space to walk. Decide on the best area for planting. Okay? When you share it with me, I would say, good choice. One thing I tell people, don't put the plants right behind the motor car. Because every morning when you start that engine and warm up, you're going to get diesel contaminants in your plant. If it's a basil plant and you wish to cook with it or make a tea, you'll be drinking diesel residues. So be careful about those things. Basic tools, I don't want you to go looking for no fancy tools. Basic tools, your garden hoe, a little shovel, have a little ruler or tape to measure, a garden hose or watering can, which you could make yourself. By the way, as we enter the harsh, dry season, if you are caught watering plants with your hose, you're in trouble, eh? You could be fined. So make sure you have a can to water your plants. And what I used to do is take a little milk, one of these juice cans, punch some holes under it with a nail, and you walk with a bucket of water and just take a cup of water and it will come down like a shower, sprinkling over the plant. A spade or a cutlass is useful. These are the types of containers. You could either get plastic or metal, it doesn't matter. Excuse me. You could use concrete blocks to block off a little spot. You could use clay. You could use wood, 2 pieces of old wood, whatever you have. You could use a half a barrel, you could use baskets. It could be any shape, it doesn't matter. What matters most is the weight, because if it's too heavy and you want to move it, you'll have to call for 2 men to lift that for you. I thought I'd review this with you because a lot of people ask questions about their soil. If you were to dig a hole, a deep hole, 6 feet deep in your yard, and you take a picture of the face of the soil, this is what you will see. You'll see the grass on top. You'll see a layer of humus. You'll see what is called topsoil. It tends to be dark. You'll see a subsoil. In the subsoil, you will see stones because that soil has not been fully converted into topsoil, where the stones disappear and make soil. And then below that, you'll get big boulders waiting to be degraded. And that's called a soil profile. In some people's cases, the topsoil was removed for construction, and therefore you left with poor soil. Whether your topsoil has been removed or not, we recommend a soil medium that you can make to put into your container to plant. Now, why do we recommend a soil mixture? Most soils carry a whole lot of seeds. And somehow, I don't know how God did this. I'll have to ask him that as an agriculturist. When I see God, when I see our Savior and our Redeemer in heaven, I will say, why it is the seeds from weeds always live longer than the real thing? Do you know that's a fact? When things went crazy in the Garden of Eden, everything went wrong side, you know. So that the plants, instead of the nice, pretty plants, instead of bearing leaves and roses, you get thorns. Those who have roses would know that even citrus plants have thorns. Some of the sweetest citrus varieties have the worst thorns. Insects are supposed to be helping us, always boring some hole and eating up the crop. And in the soil, organisms that you don't see with your eyes that do damage to your plants. One is like a worm. It's called a nematode. And nematodes enter the roots of the plant, and you know the plant is structured in such a way you have pipelines. You know, nothing human beings have come up with is a new invention. Eh? If you could visualize your pipelines at home, pipes coming up to your sink, delivering water, and pipes going from your sink back to the drain outside the house to carry the wastewater. Same thing with the plants. There's some pipelines, they're called phloem and xylem cells. These phloem and xylem vessels take water from the roots along with nutrients and carry it to the leaf. Because it's the leaves food is made. And the leaves use those green creatures, a lot of green creatures called chlorophyll, chloroplasts, that will capture the sunlight, take the food and the water and carbon dioxide to make food for the plant to grow. And when you have flowers, the excess food go into the flowers to make fruits or seeds, as the case may be. And that's why When people tell us, but my tree only getting flowers and they're not making fruits, we know there's a nutrient missing. Similarly, there are pipelines running from the leaves back down to the roots. Okay, so I'm just going to throw that in for extra good measure. Okay, so that's your leaf litter at the top. And because that has been removed, you need to make a soil mixture for your container. But in making the soil mixture, you get away from all the dangerous organisms that already live in that topsoil. Get away from half of the problem that you may encounter if you do traditional agriculture out in your yard. Okay? So this is a graphic design of what you get in soil. You get some air, you get some water, mineral particles, organic matter will be like your manure and leaves, and different organisms, humus. So soil organic matter, which we call OM for short, consists of plant and animal residues in various stages of decomposition. What does organic matter do? It improves the physical structure of the soil. I remember at university I did a 10 weeks of studying the physical structure of the soil. So don't expect me to answer all the questions about that in 10 seconds. The physical structure of the soil is important for the good functioning of that soil. Organic matter also reduces water loss. When the soil dries out too quickly, there's too much sand. You need organic matter in the soil. It decreases soil erosion. That's loss of soil when you see rainfall and it running down your yard and it taking the soil away. It supplies the plant with nutrients. Any nutrient you put in the soil, if there's no organic matter, the plant cannot get it. I want to repeat that. If your soil has no organic matter and you add fertilizers, it's still of no use to the plant. That fertilizer must go into organic matter, and the organic matter acts like a magnet to hold on to the nutrients. And then the plant compete through chemical designs for what is called cation exchange. So later on, if you get into more agricultural science, you'll hear about cation exchange capacity. And if the cation that the plant is trying to get is not attracted by the roots based on the cation exchange capacity of the soil, then the plant will starve to death. Organic matter is responsible for helping in that regard. Okay, let's move on. I have to track my time too. I don't want to go over time this evening, so I hope somebody will keep me on time. Garden soil may contain insects, weed seeds, and disease organisms. Avoid using only our garden soil because they're generally clay-type soils. And in some parts of the country, as you head towards Mausika and that area around Centennial, you have some fine sand. You water the plant in the morning, and about mid-morning, the soil is already dry. And therefore, there are few crops that could grow in that. How do you change that soil? By adding organic matter. Garden soils need to be well aerated, well drained, and able to hold enough moisture for plant growth. And that's why we suggest to you, you put the materials together, you take a shovel and turn it over like if you're mixing concrete. And when you're satisfied it's mixed properly, you put it in the container that you're going to use, or out in the yard, you make a bed with it. And the recommended mix is 1 part of your garden soil, the same soil you have, 1 part of peat mix. Now, peat mix is expensive. Don't play around with that. It's very expensive. But 1 part of peat mix, 1 part of sharp sand. If you have a pure clay soil, some sharp sand is necessary to allow for drainage, and 1 part of rotted manure. Now, if you don't have the money to buy peat mix, or if 2 of you can't get together and buy 1 bale of peat mix or 1 bag and split it between the 2 of you, I recommend you use 2 parts of rotted manure. Now, rotted manure is manure that has been left for at least 6 months to cure. If you do not leave the manure to cure, there's something called the nitrogen pull. There's a nitrogen deficit. For that manure to rot, it must get nitrogen. So if you have a plant planted with that kind of manure, the manure pulls all the nitrogen and the plant exhibits signs of nitrogen deficiency. When the manure is well rotted, it gives up the nitrogen to the plant. See the difference? So that your plant is green and healthy and nice. So if you take raw sawdust, raw grass, raw bagasse, anything like that, and you put it in your soil mix, it's going to pull the nitrogen from the soil and rob the plant of the value of that nitrogen. My note in blue at the bottom says, do not use beach sand. Anybody could tell me, well, let me see if I could phrase this question differently. You do not want to use beach sand because it is laden with salt. Is that true or false? You could type T for true and F for false. You do not use beach sand because it's laden with salt, and salt will kill your plant. It will pull too much out of the plant rather than giving things to the plant. So it's going to dry up the plant. So don't use beach sand. When you get seedlings, if let's suppose at the end of this exercise tomorrow before Sabbath begins, you want to give yourself a start, you head to the plant shop and you're looking for 5 seedlings at least. 5, just bear that in mind. I want each of you to do at least 5. You could do more, but I want you to do 5 different ones. When you buy the seedlings, make sure you could take out one and see the roots looking white. If the roots brown or you can't observe them at all, that plant is either too old or not good enough. And you could challenge the person at the plant shop with that. Choose healthy looking seedlings free of visible pests and diseases. They must be upright, the roots must be white, and the rooting media must be moist. Okay, I just thought I'd introduce you to this idea because I hear people talking about species and varieties and cultivars and if it's the same family. And this is not going in depth. This is just giving you something to ponder on, which you could review and read a little more on. Feel free to Google these things. When you think about the botanical names of plants and these terms that are used, just remember the phrase, please come out for goodness sake. The first letter of each of those words, P, C, O, F, G, S. P is for phylum. C is for the class of the organism. O is the order. So you might hear a whole lot of different families that belong to the same order. F is family. And in the last class, I would have introduced you to these 3, Alliaceae, Apiaceae, and Solanaceae. Those are family names. Within a family, you could get several genus. One genus that I want to draw your attention to is the one that tomato belongs to. It's Lycopersicum. And the species of that particular Lycopersicum, which is tomato, is Esculentum. So sometimes when you speak about which category of plants we're talking about, it is better you ask about the genus or the species. Sometimes it could be the family, but family is big, huge. You know, like we have the Stephen family from Rio Claro, right? But if you're dealing with just his household.
He said bread. He wants bread for 2 servings.
Okay, all right. And just for the preparation?
Yeah.
Okay.
They didn't ask for garlic and onion. Okay, Gemma. So here I have some examples of family. Alliaceae will be like chive, your garlic and onion. Yes, will be your celery, your parsley, and carrot. Observe carrot is in the same family with celery and parsley. So when you will not be able to tell the difference unless you really label it. And that's why it's important to know what you are doing and take notes. Lettuce will be Asteraceae. Brassicaceae will be cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, those kinds of things. Sorry. Cucurbitaceae is the cucumber, watermelon, pumpkin, squash. All of them belong to the cucurbits. Sometimes when we refer to the group, we say like cucurbits, we say brassicas. Okay?
Hi. Hello, excuse me. Sorry to interrupt, but can the host mute everyone until we finish to ask questions?
Yes, we will do that. You could actually type your question into the chat and Sister Gabrielle will take a note of it. Did you have one pertinent to the current
Thank you.
information we've covered?
No, what she's speaking about is too much of feedback. People need to mute
Feedback.
their mics.
Everybody,
Please.
just mute your mic, please. Okay, so I'll move on from this one. This was just to give you an idea of some others, like the legumes or leguminosae will be pigeon peas and all your beans and pulses and so on. Solanaceae or solanaceous crops will be like your melangine, your pepper, your tomato, and so on. Just a little note for those who might be interested. If you're suffering with arthritis, the solanaceous crops would be bad for your diet. They all carry a certain factor that causes the arthritis to hurt more. It's contained in pepper, tomato, melangine, all the stuff that we like in the morning for breakfast with sada roti and baigan, sada roti and tomato choka. And sometimes we put in a little pepper. Those things are not good. And potato. So if you're suffering with arthritis, avoid eating or putting in your diet the solanaceous crops. I just thought I'd say that as a little aside. Now, you would have heard the term crop rotation. This is more important for people doing vegetable cultivation. What you do is you change the family. So if you're doing brassicas, which will be cabbage, pak choy, cauliflower, kale, and broccoli, the next season you should do another family. Why? There are specific insects and diseases associated with each family. So if you continue with that family, sooner or later you have a hopeless case of you growing for the insects and them to eat. But when you change to a different family, let's suppose you change to legumes, you suddenly plant beans and those things, the insects get confused. You know the story written, Who Moved My Cheese? When the rats appear at the substation, they look for their cheese and they went from left to right. Where's my cheese? Who moved my cheese? The same thing happens with the insects. If you change the family that you're planting, the insects appear and they realize, wait now, where my cabbage gone? And they remain and they die. They don't have much sense like us, so they don't go anywhere else looking for cabbage. Right? They see peas and beans, and they see sim and bodi. So what they do is they just watch it and starve. They don't eat it. Wrong insect or wrong crop. So I put that there to show you, to break a pest cycle, what you do is introduce a new crop. You must tell your neighbors. Your neighbors might be just leaving the crops to grow on and feeding the insects. And you're trying to do your thing at home. Okay, I put in this here for you and you could take a shot of it. As we plant different herbs and seasonings, there's a certain distance you want, and there's a certain time you've got to wait before your first harvest. The quickest one you could harvest will be basil. Okay, some of them takes from 8 to 12 weeks, some 5 to 8 weeks, like celery and parsley. But with basil, you could wait 3 to 4 weeks to harvest. One caution: if you harvesting the plant faster than it is growing, you will still have no plant. Sandra, you might want to mute your mic, please. Sister Sandra, just mute your mic.
Brother Granger?
Yes?
As the host is Gabriel, as the host, can you make me co-host so I can help you with that, monitoring that, please?
It doesn't allow me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's I'm going to try one more time and see. Go to participants, say G E F G Gabriella. There she is. Go to more. Ah, yes, I found it. So I'm making you co-host. Thanks. Glad that you could do that.
Thank you.
Okay, observe celery you plant between 15 and 20 centimeters apart, which is 6 to 8 inches apart. But as you go to something like dill, that is a bigger plant, you want 30 to 45 centimeters. Same for fennel. Same for fenugreek. Shadow benny, closer, 15 to 20 centimeters, which is 8 to 12 inches. Oregano, I want to point this out. Oregano is a slower grower, but it needs more space. Rosemary, excellent herb to plant. You could bring your pot indoors as well and carry it outdoors as the case may be. Excellent herb, but it's a slow grower. And if you have it out in the yard, you need to give it the space because it is going to fluff out. Basil, same thing. Wait until it gets very bushy before you start harvesting. Always harvest from the outside because the outer leaves are the older leaves. If you cut out from the inside, the outer leaves get older and older until they die and you have no plant. Sage, same thing. The leaves of the sage tend to be bigger, but it's the same kind of plant like basil. Sweet marjoram, you could get away with 45 to 60 centimeters. Okay, I left tomato in there just for you to see, to get an idea for comparative purposes. All right. As I said, you could take a snapshot of that. We could always supply it to you again on the chat group. Preparing your container. Ensure that there are drainage holes in the bottom of your container. You can add a few sheets of newspaper and put about 2 inches of gravel. The gravel helps to do two things. It prevents the holes from getting clogged and it gives you drainage at the bottom. If you have 2 inches of water left in the bottom, it's going to drain out quickly out of that gravel. Okay, it also adds some weight to the bucket. Sometimes you have a light material if there's a lot of peat or manure, and in a high wind, the whole bucket will turn over and go cat sprattle. Okay, add the soil mix to the container, leaving about 1 inch at the top. Why do you want that 1 inch at the top? You're going to waste it if you go all the way to the top. When you water it, soil will wash away. 2, when you put fertilizers, that too will wash away. 3, you give yourself a chance to hold the lip of the bucket because you may not have a handle. Okay? Do not overfill. Now, for those of you who have seeds, you might have bandania seeds, or by the way, for those from the Aruka Church, I promise you you'll get some seeds. And I don't know if you could see it there. This one is basil. This is sage. This is dill. I'm assuming there are about 100 seeds in each pack. These seeds are very tiny. They're very light. Make no mistake, you'll lose half of it just in a whistle. So what we advise when you have to plant these seeds, mix the seeds with sand in a ratio of 12 to 1. So if you have 12 tablespoons of sand, you'll have 1 tablespoon of seeds. There's a need to do that, else when you plant it, there'll be too many seeds close together. All right? Make furrows in your seed tray if it's an open tray. Do not make the furrows deeper than ½ an inch. If you go, these seeds are so small, a seed should not be planted more than 10 times its diameter deep in the soil. And ½ inch is already exceeding the 10 times the size of the seed. But then you don't want, when you water, the seed flip out from the bucket or from the tray because they're so small and light. Okay?
Or your seed tray if it's all open.
Yes, that is correct. Now, if you can't make the furrows and put a row of seeds in it, try taking up between your 2 fingers, your index and your thumb, some of the material, and you could put it, how you call one of those compartments in the tray, in the seedling tray. There's a name for it. Anybody knows?
Cells.
Yes, cells, correct. We have people listening. So you take up enough that will fit between 2 fingers and put it in each cell. You're sure to get at least 1 to 2 seeds in that. Else you will find yourself with too many plants growing out of 1 cell and you don't know what to do.
Or if finger full of
Miss, I know I do that too. I talk when I write. So if you really want to follow me, you will have to put your mic on mute.
Sorry.
Now, my question there to you all is, how many seeds would make up a gram? One of these packets that you see me holding up here is 1 gram. How many seeds you think this size of seed will make up 1 gram? You could put your answer in the chat. Sister Gabrielle is looking at your chat. By the way, we had half of the people leave the meeting. Oh no, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong number. I got a little worried there. How many seeds you think would be in one of these packets, or 1 gram? 1 gram of seeds. Nobody want to guess? Anybody, Sister Gabrielle?
Yeah.
About 100 seeds, eh?
Yeah.
You get about 100 seeds in 1 gram in one of these packets. I plan to open it and make sure that I'm correct with that. These seeds are very tiny. Okay? So, establishing seedlings now. After you have the nursery growing, you may have too many plants in a small tray. You make sure it's properly wet. Do it early in the morning. Gently put the seedling in one hand and pull, and it will come out with a ball of soil. Use your index and the middle finger of the other hand, an appropriate tool to dig a hole. Among farmers, they call it a dibble, where you use a piece of stick with a sharpened point and you stick it down in the soil. Right? A little stick. The name for it is a dibble. All these things carry names. And you take out the plant or pilon. You all know about motorbike riders and riding pilon style. Person behind you, close to you and hugging. Well, when the soil is or pilon with the plant, it means the ball of soil is intact with the roots. So we want you to transfer it with that soil intact. If you try to pull it out and separate the soil, you're going to damage the tiny feeding roots. The roots that are feeding are not the big roots you see. It's some tiny, tiny hairs on the roots. Okay? So then you see how he's trying the hole with his finger? Put the pillow inside there and you firm up the soil around it. Refill the hole with some of the soil that you dig out and make sure it's firmly in. Level and gently press the soil around the plant. Water the plant to reduce transplanting shock. And try to plant on either a cloudy day or late in the evening, all around 5 o'clock. If you plant in the morning, the transpiration pull of the sun on that plant is so high, the plant is likely to wither. And there comes a point in time when the plant withers where it reaches what is called permanent wilting point. When the plant reaches permanent wilting point, you cannot bring it back. Sometimes it could wilt and you could bring it back. If you see it not coming back, it has reached the permanent wilting point. So you want to transplant late in the evening. You can do it in the night. These days people have garage with lights and things. Feel free. Yep. So the 17 essential nutrients for plant growth: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, your major nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, NPK. Secondary nutrients are calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. Those are important for strengthening the cells of the plant. And then you have minor or trace elements. Please just look at your mic and see if it is on mute.
So, can I ask a question?
So Granger is muted now.
Go ahead with your question, sister.
I had one that was wilting permanent, looked like it was permanent wilting, but I put soap water on it and it was revived with oil. Is that a good remedy?
It's not a remedy. The plant didn't reach permanent wilting point. You're lucky. Yeah, it didn't reach permanent wilting point. Some plants tolerate a little more than others, and some have no tolerance. You leave me thirsty, I go dead. So it wasn't really a solution. It's just that it still was within the range of revival. Okay, so your trace elements will be iron, magnesium or manganese, chlorine, copper, molybdenum, things are important because it helps the fruits to develop if you have fruits. I want to tell you, these are not absolutely necessary when you're doing herbs. But if you want to get seeds from your herbs, then you have to make sure they can flower and then produce seeds. Then you will need the complete spectrum of micronutrients. I'll repeat that because it's not written on the slide. Because we're doing herbs and seasonings, what you want is leaves. However, if you want to carry a particular herb plant to the point where you get seeds, you need to make sure you have the micro elements so it can flower and produce their fruit, which is in their case, the seeds. Okay? So moving on. After monitor my time. Okay, fertilizers, we speak about NPK, and we see what is a high nitrogen fertilizer, 4600 or 30-10-10. High potash will be like 10-52-10. Observe NPK. So in this case, high potash, P, the middle one has to be high. So that's how you understand the name of a fertilizer when you read it. If you buy 12-12-17, it's 12 nitrogen, 10 potash, 17 K. If, for instance, you had a crop like tomatoes and it's ready to bear and you find the flowers dropping off, 12-12-17 would be necessary. Early in the crop life, if you're going to have fruits, a balanced fertilizer like 20-20-20 is sold as Nutrex, or 10-10-10 would be important. So you buy those, you only need like 1 teaspoon per plant for 3 months. You side dress it and you leave that for 3 months and water it. Fertilizing the plants, always follow the manufacturer's recommendations. Generally add 1 to 2 teaspoons of fertilizer per plant. Spread the fertilizer 1 inch away from this main stem and water it into the soil. Okay, you could see it in the picture there. That blue thing, the blue stars, that's where you put the fertilizer. You don't put it too close up to the plant, else you're going to kill the plant. Underwatering. Now this is important for all plants. If you underwater plants, it's going to struggle. You will get premature dropping of the leaves. You will get brown, yellow, or curl leaf edges. Similarly, if you're overwatering, and a lot of herbs that we'll be growing do not like to be overwatered. Sometimes we get away because we use a very sandy soil. So people who grow rosemary and French thyme, you all know the French thyme? Just put in the chat box, French thyme has the big leaf. Is that true or false? T for true, F for false. Well, I can't see your chat box. I may have to click on chat to see.
Is that the same as oregano?
Yes, it is. The French thyme is the oregano, and the Spanish thyme, which is also originally called Cuban thyme, which Trinidadians call big leaf thyme, is the other one. Okay? They don't like a lot of water. Some of them like a little cooler conditions like this one. Spanish thyme prefers a little shade from the sun, so it doesn't like the full 8 to 10 hours of sunlight. How much water should I give my plant? It depends on the type of plant, its location, the age of the plant, the soil type. For open areas, water your plant if the soil is dry to the touch. You could take a stick and push it into the soil. When you pull out the stick, if it is dry, you know the soil needs some water. If the stick is wet, you know the soil is wet enough. Okay? There's a way of tapping the pot. And if the soil is dry, you hear a hollow sound. If the soil is wet, you will get a dull sound. Okay? I just said that there. Try not to overwater. Harvesting. Harvest early in the morning. Determine maturity by size, color, shape, age, and a gentle touch. Use a clipper. It's called a secateur or a nipper. or whatever you want to call it. Don't pluck the leaves off. Don't pluck the plants. It does more damage to the plant than if you did a sharp cut to remove a portion for your use. Plants like celery, parsley, chive, carefully remove the outermost leaves, allowing the younger leaves to develop to maturity inside. I've seen people at home with shadow benny, and sometimes they pick the whole plant and say it will grow back. Yes, that's a lot of stress on that plant. But if you took 2 outer leaves from 5 plants, you'll get 10 leaves. And you give it a week or 2 to revive, and you take 2 more leaves. That means if you want to harvest every day, then you should have about 20 individual shadow benny growing, right? These days, seems as though we like shadow benny more than ever. I remember the days when you put 1 in the pot and it's too much. Now people put 10 and it's not enough. They say, put some more shadow benny. Pests, I said earlier, you don't normally get insects in seasonings. They hate seasonings. In fact, in your vegetable garden, when you plant basil and thyme and rosemary and dill among your plants, it keeps away the insects. For fungus, you get fungal diseases, and that is caused because the plant is too thick. You need to prune a bit, and you need the air to be able to pass through between and blow the fungal spores away. Good air movement throughout the plant canopy. That's all you have to do, you know. Don't, for God's sake, get involved in using chemicals to treat your herbs for fungus. The day you have to do that, something is wrong. Call me quick, I'll tell you what you do wrong. Most times, the plant is too thick and not thinned out. There's not enough sunlight, and you wetting in the night. And some people believe when you wet the plant in the night, you have to give it a shower. So you wet the whole plant. The water is needed at the root. Tool safety. Never take it for granted that the little grandchild or the little baby that is around is safe with whatever you're doing. They will take your secateurs. They find it looks like a scissors. They want to cut off piece of their hair. They might end up cutting off piece of their ears. Be careful. You don't know what children will do. The moment you turn your back, they take something and put it in their mouth. It might be fertilizer. It is going to poison them because it's a heavy dose. It's like having a heavy dose of Epsom salts. All right? So for you to make sure you wear some kind of eye protection when you're doing your gardening. These are some categories of plants that we wish to look at, and I highlighted it here, and we have a lot of time in our hands for questions. People tend to mix these things up like callaloo. We have grasses, plants that are grasses, and there's one grass I would like us to consider. It's called lemongrass. Some people call it fever grass. It's the same thing. It's a source of lemon extracts. It gives you the lemon flavor without the acid. So if you like lemon flavor, but you don't like the acid that comes with it, lemongrass is really good. I remember sharing a joke. I was in this tourist resort in this distinct island called Bali off the coast of Indonesia. Small island, but only for tourists. And we ordered lunch, and they brought us this beverage. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was a glass of tea, and the tea was lemongrass mixed with shadow benny. Fever grass and shadow benny drink. Top class restaurant. Top notch dollars. So sometimes we have it right here and we don't recognize the value of it for everyday use. So if I could just move away into the health aspects, because I love speaking about the health aspects of agriculture, but today is not the day for it. Okay, sages, we have a sage here among the seeds we're going to plant. There's this one called the broadleaf sage. We have shrubs, we have herbs, we have spices. Spices are totally different to seasonings. Your spices will be like black pepper, turmeric. What else you have? Clove. Those are spices. All right, it's different to the herbs and these seasonings we're talking about. Then you have vegetables, and then you have trees. There are some trees that are used as seasonings, like bay leaf. It's also used as a spice. All right, so I thought I'd just introduce you all to those concepts. So when we speak about herbs and seasonings, you understand some of what we'll be going into. I've listed some that we'll be looking at in this course. Lemongrass, and you might want to write these down. I'll give you a minute to write it down. Lemongrass, or you could take a picture of the screen. Chardon Benny, and that's how it's spelled, Chardon Benny. I hear a lot of Trinidadians say Shadow Benny, but that's all right. That's we Trinity thing. But if you're talking to other people, they wouldn't know what you're talking about. You've got to say Chardon Benny. Chive or onions, parsley, celery, basil, and there are about, I don't know, about 5 types of basil I've come across. There's sage, the different sages. There's dill, and I will introduce you to 17 varieties of dill. Most of them may not grow here at all, but dill is wonderful. Fenugreek, fennel. Fennel is excellent. Do you know you could make a soup with fennel? It produces a big bulb at the bottom, looking like pak choy, and it makes an excellent broth to help you in recuperating and help you with your energy levels. Both men and women will like it. Then there's marjoram, and there's sweet marjoram and regular ones. And then at the bottom, I put Spanish thyme and French thyme. It's just, instead of just saying thyme. What I want you to do is choose 5 of those. I will teach all, but I want you to choose 5 that you would grow at home as part of your assignment for this course. There is a certificate you can get, but certificates are not just for giving away. You must do a certain amount of work to show that you have studied the topic. And therefore, I want you to choose 5. How do you get plants? I have some seeds here I promised the people from Aruka, those who were registered through Sister, what's her name again? Burgess, Chantal Burgess. I promised her these seeds. So there's about 300 seeds here. And I am sure Sister Gabrielle will be able to contact you all about how you all can get some seeds that she might have. And I want to exhort you to go to your plant shop. They have plants. And just get 5 different ones. Okay, that's not too hard to do. I know that the government station in La Reunion and the station in San Augustine, they have plants as well. And the government tend to sell them a little cheaper than the nurseries. But of course, you got to pay to go to Centeno. It might be easier just to go to the plant shop and pay $10 for a plant rather than spending $40 gas to go for a $2 plant. It's up to you. That's your homework for this week. Okay? I want to pause here. I have something else I will show you just for some fun. But I just want to say thank you for listening. I know it's very hard on a hot, sunny afternoon. Okay, shoot with your questions. Who would be first? I don't know if Sister Gabrielle has some.
So if you can raise your hands so we can know the orders of the questions. So we'll go in order as we have the hands raised. There are a couple questions in the group, Brother Granger, in the chat.
Okay.
So I can probably start with those as they raise their hands. Someone asked, why are there always white lines on the peppermint leaves? Is that fungus?
Okay. If my memory serves me right, there's an insect that likes to lay its eggs on some leaves. When they actually lay that egg inside the leaf. If you do a cross section of the leaf from top to bottom, you'll be surprised how many things exist from the top layer to the bottom layer. And inside it's like a city. And when these insects deposit their eggs, their babies are born. They are larval stage, like a caterpillar for a butterfly, and they eat all the green material as they travel. And when you see the lines on the leaf, that is where they have already eaten. It's not a major problem, but if you want to stop it the moment you begin to see it, you pluck off those leaves and destroy them. Don't leave them in the garden, because that larva will mature in the leaf and emerge to lay again. So what I do is I walk with my scissors and I clip off all those leaves. I put it in a little bag or a bowl and I microwave them. Or you seal it in a bag and put it in the garbage. So when they hatch, they can't get out the bag. Yeah? Tiny,
Okay.
they're called leaf miners. They mine
Minus.
through the leaf. Yeah.
Okay, another one. Someone asks if you have a picture of the French thyme.
I will look at that before the class ends. Yes, and I will send it.
Okay. And someone else wants to know, is molasses a good fertilizer?
Trying hard to remember if I used it. About 15 years ago, I used to be responsible for an organic farm in South America. The size of that farm was half the size of Tobago. Our own natural fertilizers, except I'm not sure if they use molasses. If they did, they would have used the molasses to feed the worms to produce the specific fertilizer. But molasses is not added straight to the soil as a fertilizer. It's used as an animal feed, and it's probably, don't hold me to this, it's probably used to feed worms to produce fertilizers. But it's not used in the soil, no.
Okay, so we take Marian Raphael's question.
Come in, Marian.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. In respect to the assignment we have to do, if you already have those things growing, how would you address that?
Out of the entire list, you are growing every one.
No, not everyone, at least 5 or 6 of them.
No, I want you to start with 5 new ones in containers.
Okay.
The exercise will be to get 5 containers, choose 5 of these plants and do your soil mix and plant it for me to see and take a picture and send.
All right, thanks.
Okay? If you so choose to remove a plant that is already growing and pot it, that will be fine. I want you to see the difference between having a potted herb or seasoning plant and be able eventually to put it as part of your kitchen decor. You could even have it on your windowsill. I remember being a student and staying on Canada Hall, and I had my plants, and people say, Leon, what tea is that you're drinking? I said, this is mint. Oh, where did you buy that? I said, no, I went to the parlor by the window. I get fresh mints. Could we have some too? I said, sure, I want you to put on a plant so you could get your own tea. And you see, that is the kind of conversation we want you to have with your fellow churchgoers, with your own children, so they learn how to do things and save. And 3, to get things that are healthy. And if you go by your neighbor, I want you one day to be able to take a potted plant. It doesn't have to be a big pot, it could be a small pot. And take it to your neighbor and say, look what I brought you today. Some of the tea that I drink. It's in a plant. This is the name of the plant. And this is a gift to you. You know why? A lot of time, people who go to church don't visit their neighbors. They spend way too much time at church and don't get a chance to tell our neighbor what we're doing. They see you dress up, and they don't know what you're going to do. They know you go and disappear somewhere to church and you come back. And they're looking holier every time they see you. You got to share some of that with them. And this is a way to share. And if you don't come to church, that's quite okay. Share with some other neighbors. All right? No,
Okay, Melissa.
Passing through your village, I'll stop and have some tea.
Okay, sure. Melissa Gill.
Hi, good afternoon. So I have 2 questions. My first question is, when do I water the seedling? Do I water it before transplanting it or after? That's my first question. And the second one is, I planted some celeries before and experienced some small snails in the root of the plant. What can I use for that? And after the snails, the celery plants, it's either to wither or melt away. Could you help me with that, please?
Okay. So I forgot the first question already. What was the first question?
So the first question was, transplanting the seedlings. Do I
No,
water it before transplanting or after?
you water it both before and after. You water it before so you could take it out properly. And after you set it in, you water again. Point number two, or question number two. If you see snails in the roots of your plants, you have too much water. And it is possible that the rooting medium you use or the potting medium or your bed might be made up of material that holds too much water. Clay tends to hold too much water, and that's why we have 1 part sand out of the 4 different components of your soil mix. Sand allows for drainage, and in your container, the last 2 inches must be gravel. You will never have 2 inches of water. The water will drain out naturally. Once you have plant medium that is too wet, snails will come to live. Okay? And eventually, because it's considered to be like overwatering, the plant is going to what we call melt or die. Okay, they don't like to be.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next.
Okay, we'll take a question from the chat. Someone asks, when sowing seeds, do I use the same soil that you recommended for planting?
Yes, exactly. You can either do that or you can use pure peat, which is the ideal mix, the #1 mix in the world for setting seeds. But you could use that soil mix that I told you about. What I recommend too is after you use a batch for seedlings, you could always empty the remnants into your soil mix and use a fresh set, because diseases tend to be carried over. So that sometimes the disease might start in your plant mix and you mightn't observe it. But the second setting of seeds, you get a fungal attack and you lose all your plants.
Okay, next question. Can paint buckets be used for planting?
Exactly, yes. Paint buckets could
Paint.
be clay.
Paint bucket. Paint. P-A-I-N-T. Paint buckets.
Paint buckets. My favorite is paint buckets. I find it's difficult to get pigtail buckets, so I go with paint buckets.
Okay, one more from the chat before we go back to persons. This one is, I had a mint tree. It was really big. Then it began to dry just like that. I was never able to revive it. What could have been the reason?
Now, when I get a question like that, I need more information. Was that plant out in the sun? Because if it was out in the sun, too much sun will begin to kill it at some stage. And 2, it's possible it needed some extra nutrients. And 3, if it was in a container, it has now outgrown the container. You needed to have cut it, take out the roots, trim the roots, reset it, and plant it all over again. Because these plants, especially the ones we're doing, they're really native to the Mediterranean world and they like a different kind of climate. Sometimes it cannot take all the sunshine we give it, so it has to have a little more shade. So the number of things that could have happened, I am only trying to tell you what to expect next time. When you see these things happening, notes that you take guide you. Like, I don't know if it was planted out in the sun, full sun. I don't know if it was planted in a container, and I don't know if you fed it any extra nutrients.
Okay, I think Jessian Jofi's hand was up before. So Jessian.
Yes, Josiane, are you there?
Yes, good night, sir. Good night, everybody. I was trying to unmute my mic. Okay, thanks for the person who gave the question on the that peppermint. I had the same problem. All right, my question is, apart from concerning the rotation of the crops that you have spoken on earlier, I know you said that the pest, that is to avoid the pests and stuff, but does it also help with the NPK in the soil?
Yes, plants exhaust whatever you feed them. It's like if you have a little bowl and you have a little puppy, and you have a bag of feed, but you empty all the feed in the bowl for the puppy. The puppy ate, it grew, become an adult dog, the chow run out and you then get the next bag. So it exhausts the nutrients required from that. Remember, the plant has a set of roots that only extend to a certain limit. A big tree will go down 6 feet down in the ground, sometimes 15 feet, and pull nutrients from there, carry it up to the leaves drop, the leaves rot, the nutrients go back for surface feeders. A little plant can't do that, and
Can you hear from one of the people say?
especially as you're using the leaves to do what you
Wait a
want
minute, until 6 o'clock it's on.
and not
Marianne,
feeding back.
excuse me, Marianne, can you mute your mic, please? Yes,
Leaves are not feeding back the plants, you are taking the leaves. Therefore, you need to give it some more food. They depend on you to feed them. And that's the solution. Sometimes, depending on the age of the plant, you need to take it out of the pot, break up the soil, do a new soil mix, put it in and plant over. So always be prepared to do that kind of thing. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
Carlin Coca.
Carlene.
Okay. If not, we go to Phyllis and Bryce. If
Good
Carlin
afternoon.
is there.
Good afternoon. Are you hearing me?
We are.
Yes, we are.
Okay. But thanks for the information. Just two things I want to find out, please. I'm interested in growing onions. Could you grow onions from existing onions? How do you actually grow onions? One. And two, lemongrass. How do you grow that in particular? Because I'm not too sure if there are seeds for those two things.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the last statement tells me you're asking about whether there are seeds for onions as well. Yes, there are seeds for onions. The recommended variety for this part of the world is Texas Early Grano 502. And the reason why 502 is used, the Texas Early Grano 502, is because you need a certain number of sunlight days with no rain for the bulb to form. And the early Grano 502 allows you 45 rainless days with full sunlight for it to form the bulb. Other varieties need a longer period, and we do not have that longer period in Trinidad. Places like Mexico, they're able to do that easily because they go for months without rain, 6 months. That's 180 days. Yes, you could use an onion that is already sprouting because they like lower temperatures. If you put your onions in the refrigerator at the bottom shelf, they will begin to sprout. You take them out, you slice off the face, the two faces, and the two sides, and you plant what remains. With the top, it will grow and it will form another bulb. Bulbing is something that is difficult for a crop like that in our weather. Sometimes they need a little lower temperature. Just remember you are taking an onion that was grown somewhere with a different climatic condition. If you don't replicate the condition here, it may not form the bulb. Bulbing is a specific change, physiological change that the plant has to achieve. If the conditions are not right, it will not achieve it. I'll give you two quick examples. You realize we buy sorrel for Christmas? We buy sorrel for Christmas and sometimes for Carnival. What is the reason? Sorrel plant will not bear flowers unless the day is long. So for who observe that the sun goes down like 5:30 to 5:45, you get a slightly longer day. That is needed to initiate flowering in sorrel, else you will get no sorrel. Same for pigeon peas. It's called photoperiodism. So what happens is that if you're planting sorrel or pigeon peas near a street light, or you have one of these security lamps on in your yard, those trees will never flower. Same thing for bulbing. To get a bulb form in a bulbing crop, you need a lower temperature. And if you don't have that lower temperature, it will not bulb. So if you want to get the lowest temperature, you try to plant around August, so that 90 days after, as you hit the cooler times in Christmas, you will get bulbing. So yes, you could use your onion bulb, let it sprout in the fridge, cut off the sides, then plant, and it will bulb only if the temperatures are low. Garlic is even worse. Garlic requires a much lower temperature. Like you might get a garlic to grow here, but it may not bulb. Okay? Did I answer?
And the lemongrass? And the lemongrass.
Lemongrass is a true grass. I have never seen them seed. So what is called the stolon, you just root up some lemongrass, clean the roots, and plant it, and it will grow forever.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Phyllis Sandbryce.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. My question.
Sorry about that. Can you unmute yourself? Sorry about that.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks to the sponsor. My question is that we can use peat in soil preparation for planting. I would like to know cocoa peat could be used.
I heard the name of the peat, but I didn't hear for planting what.
For herbs, planting.
Yes, but cocoa peat, you have to be careful that it is well rotted. If it's not well rotted, it's of no use to you. You know what is referred to as cocoa peat, if I am correct, it's from coconuts, it's the fiber from the coconut. That is normally used if you want to get a cutting to root, and it's done a lot with cocoa, for instance. So they make a bed of cocoa peat and they insert sticks of the cocoa plant, and after 30 days it begins to root in the dark, and then you take it out from there and you pot it. So if that is the peat you're referring to, if you want to use it to plant something, it must be well rotted. So if you put some coconut husks together and leave it for a year and keep them wet, they should rot down enough to be able to use for that. Yeah?
Okay.
Natasha was there.
Sister Voza, it's your turn.
Yes, my question is, could you use chicken manure or goat manure to plant?
Yes. Top of the line. It's very good.
Thank you very much.
It's cured. I advise people to, if you go for chicken manure, try to make sure it's not manure that was treated with diesel. They spray diesel on it to prevent the or they may spray something diesel, and you will be placing that in a pan and have it in your pot and all of that. So a smart way of asking, I found that Trinidadians are so intelligent that you have to ask them some smarter questions. Instead of asking, did you treat this manure with diesel? You make a statement, say, I hope you treated this with diesel. They might say no. If they say no, say, all right, I'll buy it. But if they say, sure, yes, I treated it with diesel, you don't know, it's to avoid it. Because you don't want to blow any diesel in it. Yes, food. Okay? Diesel is dangerous.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, let me read a question from the chat, Brother Granger.
Yes.
Someone wants to know if bleach bottles are safe. Bleach bottles.
Soak them for a week. Let them soak for a week.
Okay. Next question. Someone said that you suggested that they cut the dill tree that was spreading and then it died.
Oh, all right. That's one is strange.
Okay, so.
Then something is wrong with the base of the plant.
Okay.
I would like to follow up on this particular question. I remember getting the question. I'd like to get some details to be able to follow up to see where we would have gone wrong, because cutting back a dill should not kill it.
I am here, Brother Granger. It
Yes.
just died. It wasn't very big, but it started, as you said, branching out.
Yes.
I cut it and it died.
What was the original problem? Just remind me.
I think it was just whining like. I think I had put a picture, I placed a picture on the chat of it, and you told me to cut it. And after I cut it, it died.
I will return to that question on the chat and see where we would have gone wrong. If I went wrong, I will let you know. If you went wrong, I will also let you know. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question from the chat. Someone says, if you have dashing bush behind your house and the water from your kitchen sink is running in the drain, is that safe for cooking, seeing that you use squeezy to wash the dishes? Is that harmful for consumption?
It shouldn't be, except I could tell you, I have tasted dashing from those conditions, and if you have a sensitive tongue, you'll get the taste of soap on your tongue. So it picks up some of the soap eventually, because the dashing will be growing there for at least 9 months. Some of it gets absorbed into the roots. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you use it for eating. You could use the leaves. The leaves are safe. But once you start harvesting leaves, you get small dashings. So you're either doing it for leaves or for the root. So the answer to the question is yes, it's going to be affected by the soap water. You could take a chance with one and taste and see if you're getting any taste of soap. If there's no taste of soap, you're good to go. If you're pouring chemicals down that drain, though, I'll be very careful. I'll be very careful if I'm pouring Clorox and poisonous substances and disinfectants and those things.
Diane, Virgil?
Hi, good night. I have 2 questions or 3 questions. The first one is I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I will purchase rosemary from a supplier. It will be growing very nice in the pot. And from the time I transferred from the pot, having it in the pot for about 3 months, it dies.
I missed one part. By the time you transfer from the pot to where?
To the ground, to the earth.
Right. So that is where the problem is. The soil mix in the ground is not the suitable soil mix for it. Okay, rosemary and those things, they don't like too much clay. They like a well-drained soil. They don't stand. There are 2 things they don't like. They don't like too much sun, and they don't like too much water. So the best way to have it is in a controlled condition. When you have it in a pot, you know what's going in the pot, and you could put the pot where it gets 5 hours of sunlight, and the rest is shade. It needs that amount of shade. It will grow prolifically with a little shade. It needs a little sun, but it needs a little shade as well. And not too much water and not heavy soil. It will die instantly in heavy soil. And that is why. That is why. Yes?
It's coincidental. There's a question, the flip side to Diane's question in the chat. Someone said they moved the rosemary plant from the yard to the pot and it died.
Well, they probably didn't treat the pot properly. The pot must have the kind of soil mix you expect. 2, the pot must be deep enough because you need some root room. Some people put it in pots that are way too small, and you suddenly take it maybe from the environment it was in to an environment that has either more sun or no sun. You see, people change environments, and sometimes it's not just the root that creates the problem, but it's the environment. Plants are strange. Remember that it's native to the Mediterranean part of the world. They like a cooler temperature. They don't like too much rain. They like a light, sandy soil. So whatever you mix for the pot, it must be good. It is highly likely in the yard where you had it growing, it seemed to have had some sandy content on that spot that would have allowed it to live. I'll give you an example with animals. Trinidad, some years ago, when I had just graduated and started working in the ministry, imported some animals from Australia called the Australian milking zebu. They tried to get those animals because the area from Australia it was coming from is nearly the same as Trinidad. We built a special facility for them. You know what happened? Every single one died. That one we were not able to explain. So sometimes in nature you can't explain everything. But I'm almost certain with that rosemary plant, it moved from a spot in the yard that was almost perfect like to a container that changed the conditions for it. You might want to
Question.
I have the second question.
Before you move on from the rosemary, Dan, one more question on the rosemary. Someone is asking, what is a good soil mix for rosemary then, since it seems to be sensitive?
It must be sandy. You must have that sand mix in it. So if you had your ordinary yard soil that was not sand and is heavy clay, it's going to die. It prefers a sandy soil, and the mixture I've given you all to use in the container will work for any plant. It must have some manure, it must have some sand, it must have a little bit of clay to retain some water. The peat helps it to be a little more porous.
Continue, Diane.
Okay, I just recently purchased some dill and it was doing well. And all of a sudden, I separated one because I didn't want it to be too much in the sun. The one that was in the sun, more like 80% of the sun, that dried out and died. I don't know if it could be revived based on what you said that what can happen to wilting plants. And the other one that was not in the sun and in the cool is thriving. So is it to take that the dill does not take plenty sun?
Yes, dill also does not like a lot of sun. And I will deal with that when we go into each one of the plants. I have not attempted yet to look at any one of these single 12 plants that we have mentioned. In the next 2 classes, we're going to take 6 of them and then the next 6, so we would cover all 12, and I'll give you the conditions that are ideal for each.
So can I revive it? Because it dried out yesterday, so what can I do to try to revive it, or it's too late?
Send me a picture of it, let me see. Right, WhatsApp me a picture immediately after this program, and I'll look at it and see what we can do for it.
All right, and the last question is that I had some silk fig experimenting in a bucket, and it was doing very well. And I observed today that the plant break in half. What does that mean? Is it rotten inside out, or something happened?
I missed the last phrase. This evening,
the silk fig plant, it bent in half, and the stem of it feeling like, you know, like when it's drying out inside out. So can I save it still, or is it a disease, or I've never seen that before.
Take a picture of the bucket that you have it in and send it to me. I suspect what's happening is you could have some weevils inside there. Could. It would have to be, but you could. But it seems, it comes across very strange to me that it's beginning to dry out in the stalk. But whichever one is happening, you could take that plant out of the bucket, cut the plant completely, and start over. But I'll go through that process with you. Because if you have weevils in it, the banana weevils, they will continue to lay eggs, be hatched, and continue eating out the inside of the root of the plant.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Leslie and Charles.
Hi, good evening. I just the five
herbs and seasonings that
yeah. So is it that we have to get them as plants and put them in the cups with the mix that you told us about earlier?
Exactly. You visit a nursery, select 5 nice ones.
Okay.
And you should have had your plant mix ready, so you just put it in, water it, and take your pictures.
The rotten manure.
Yes.
I will get that in the agri shop also.
Some agro shops carry it. What I will do is I'll post on this site people who say they have manure for sale, they tend to be around Shogunas. I've seen someone in Rio Claro with manure for sale, chicken manure. Or if you contact someone with a chicken farm, they will have. They may even tell you, come and collect it yourself, bag it yourself and take it. The problem with that is farm, it may need resting and rotting. For those who live in the Aruka area, the EKIAF school sells manure.
Okay.
Next question. Are you finished, Leslie? Sorry, are you finished? Okay.
I saw African snails in my yard recently.
What area of Trinidad?
I'm in Shogona.
Wow.
Yeah.
You need to report it to the Ministry of Agriculture in Shogunas. Whenever you see anybody, if you see African snails in your yard, your next move is to report it to the Ministry of Agriculture.
Okay.
Additionally, what you can do, get a bucket, put a pound of salt, that should be salty enough. You put them inside the bucket and they will die.
Yeah, well, I threw the salt on them, so that did the job.
Okay. And but you get rid of them because they leave a lot of eggs.
Yeah.
The eggs will hatch and you'll have 1,000 more coming. And be careful with handling them with your bare hand because they carry the organism responsible for whatever you call it. One of those.
Meningitis.
Meningitis, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, they are the carrier for that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Brother Ranger.
Wendy Busher.
Good night, everyone.
Yes, Sister Wendy.
Yes, it's pronounced voucher, like voucher.
All right.
No problem. Anyway, I had some aloe plants, and they were growing very lovely, and there were even other plants were coming out from them. Right? I transplanted them about 3 to 4 feet away from where they were. Right? Out of necessity, I had to do that. They died. Can you tell me what was the reason? Why?
Yeah, it sounds like you didn't carry enough roots with it. And therefore, there was no way for it to take up nutrients to remain alive. And especially if they were like nearly to the adult stage, you need to cut back the whole leaf and just plant the rooted section, maybe with 2-3 of the middle leaves. Point number 3, I hope you didn't put it in a very wet condition. Wet conditions cause them to not thrive well and they die.
What happened? Was the whole
It's a type plant.
with the big leaves and everything?
Yeah. Yeah, you needed to remove some of that. That would have stressed it out.
Okay. All right. The other question.
Those are the middle ones that are young and still coming up.
Okay.
And make sure when you root it up, you didn't pull it out of the ground. You take it out with a spade, with some soil, as we say, or pillow. The ball of soil is intact with the roots.
All right.
Always wet it before you do that, so the soil remains and doesn't come out like powder.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The other question is, I had some cauliflower planted, and they grew on all of that, and I'm thinking when I will harvest them in about 2-3 days. And I had a visitor. I don't know which creature decided to harvest it before me. So I was wondering if you know which creatures like cauliflower.
Yeah. Maybe you had a goat, a sheep.
No, it didn't. It was not a goat or a sheep. I was wondering if it was something else, like, I don't know if I saw manico in the area already. So I was wondering if it was something like that.
The manico wouldn't eat it. It might be an iguana, or maybe somebody stole it.
Yeah, I saw iguana already in the area.
Yeah, iguana will eat that like nothing. Remember, it's a flower, and iguanas love flowers.
Okay. All right. I also want to know why my pawpaw tree grow lovely, really nice leaves. They start to bear, but they don't come to maturity. And before I used to get lovely peppers, right? I would just throw the seeds in the yard and they would catch. And now I don't know what is happening. And I also see even some of those that had lovely leaves, I see the leaves are drying up now. So I'm wondering what's going on.
So you have two problems. You have a situation where you see babies being formed, young fruits being formed on the tree, and they're not maturing. That will be a different problem. Time to give that plant some more K of your NPK. You add some more K.
If the plant somewhat?
You know, in your NPK formulation for fertilizer that I spoke of earlier,
okay,
fertilizer that has more K.
Okay.
It helps the fruit to form after you have the flowers.
Okay.
If the plant has been bearing a lot before, just like the little puppy eating out the puppy chow, there's no more chow left.
Okay.
And secondly, if the leaves are getting smaller, it also needs the other parts of the NPK to put on nice big leaves. What we
The
hope
leaves are
is,
big and nice, but it's the fruit is the problem.
okay, all right.
Okay. One
Okay.
other question. I observed that some people mango trees grow all year round, and I was wondering why it is the others don't do the same thing. Is it that they're missing some nutrients or something?
No, mango trees respond to rainfall. If you had a year of no rainfall, the next year you'll get an abundance of mangoes. Secondly, if rain always falling by you, the tree doesn't get a chance to go into what we call stress mode to produce flowers. Mango trees are noted for that. If the area where your mango tree is getting plenty water or plenty rain, it will not be as much as a person in Labre who has a lot of drought. Mango trees respond to drought. So if you have a short
Oh,
dry season of 3 months, it will begin to flower. And you get 2 months of rain and 3 more months of sunshine, it will flower again. So yes, we have mangoes right now in our yard because what my mom did, she concreted the yard. So even if rainfall, it doesn't go down in the ground. So the tree always feeling like it's stressed. And they're always bearing flowers.
well, what happened? My mango tree had a lot of flowers in it, and the rain came and beat off all.
I see.
That was another problem.
Okay, okay.
That only happened this year. The other years that did not happen.
All right.
Thanks.
So now you know the difference.
Yeah,
Okay, we have lots of, sorry about that, sorry. We have lots of questions in the chat, Brother Granger.
Okay.
I just want to give some information from here, though, too.
Wrap up my presentation.
Okay, so just let me ask two questions, give some information and ask one question from here. There's a member of the group, her name is Marian Raphael. She works at the Extension Training and Information Services for the Ministry of Agriculture. And she's saying that persons can email what we call ETIS, that department, etis.division@yahoo.com if you do see the African snails, because someone else comment about it in the chat as well. So you can email the ministry's training department, etis.division@yahoo.com. Someone asking here if horse manure is good manure.
The answer is yes. I just want to alert you. The moment you're handling horse manure, make sure you had your tetanus vaccine shot. Because horses, by nature, they harbor the tetanus bacteria. In fact, the vaccine you get for tetanus is extracted from horses' blood because their blood serum carries the antigen for tetanus. So whether you knew it or not, when you get the injection as a child for tetanus, it is an extract from horse's blood which carries the antigen. So once you are handling horse manure, you have to make sure you wear a glove. Be careful. If you have any cut on your hand, you will get tetanus. And tetanus kills. Within 3 days, you will get, how you call it, stiff and you can't move. It attacks the muscles. And the last muscle it attacks is the heart. where the heart will stop beating. Just know that, but it is a good manure.
We have a gentleman with his hand up. We haven't really heard from anyone this
Ray, go ahead.
evening. Sorry, go right ahead.
Yes, I'm Rainash. I just like to find out, Epsom salt, is Epsom salt good as a fertilizer, and how can you use it?
Yes, Epsom salt is one of those minor elements, magnesium, manganese, one of the two. It's one of those trace elements that is needed for fruiting. So when you put Epsom salt into your garden, it helps in fruiting for the plant. So if you never fertilize a tree, it's bearing plum or cherries or tamarack or what have you, it will allow the plant to start to bear. That's what it does. But it's very one-sided. It's a very one-sided fertilizer. It's one element. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Are you taking any more questions, Mr. Granger?
Let me just run through this, and at the end of this presentation, if there's one last question our coordinator could entertain, we will entertain it. This is called the A to Z of herbs for herb gardening. I just thought out of interest you might want to see it. I will send it to you. It's available online. Tips for growing an abundant edible herb garden. This one is the A to Z herb guides. You say A is for Angelica. That's what Angelica look like, right? That one is called, this other one. Just now, let me make sure I'm not calling the wrong name. Yeah, that's Angelica. Angelica above, sorry. That's what I'm saying. The other one is anise. This one here below with the yellow tops, anise. And this is anise hyssop. And I'm showing it because you might want to find this site and download it and keep it. This is basil. Okay. This is bay leaves for those of you who never saw the tree. This one is called bee balm. It's not something we grow on the side of the world. This is borage. Borage is excellent, very good for healthy cell formation in your body. It's a good antioxidant and good for your health. But we don't grow borage on the side of the world. Calamint is another one. It's giving you A to Z, so you get capers, caraway, cardamom. Some people are lucky to get cardamom to fruit in Trinidad. Cardamom is excellent on your body. It's good to use in teas. It's in the cooler conditions, so up in the mountains in Blanchisseuse, you see this growing, cardamom. Catnip, or it's also called catnip. This one you know it, but you don't know it. Chamomile, that's what the flowers look like. It's a very, very common flower around North America. Chicory. You have chive, but these chives are blossoming, and that's why they don't look like what you buy in the shop. Cilantro or coriander. Right, I think we have some cilantro seeds around. Comfrey. This is the Cuban oregano, or what we call Spanish thyme or big leaf thyme. If anybody want to get some plants, I have some to give away. Come with a little bag of soil and I'll give it to you. Cumin. Cumin is what we know as jeera. Cumin is used in the making of curry. Most people don't know there are 12 spices that are used and ground together to make curry. Cumin is one. This is curry leaf. You know dandelion, excellent for the urinary tract. Yeah, dill. This is your dill. They like a little sunlight, they like a cooler temperature, and they like some space. This one is a new one to me, epazote or epazote. There you have fennel. You see the bulbs of the fennel forming there, and it looks a lot like dill. But you could make a broth using that bulb section of fennel. Okay. Fenugreek. We have fenugreek seeds. Feverfew. It'll be useful for you all to download this for yourself. There's galangal as well as garlic. Okay. Ginger, you know this. Okay, everybody should have a ginger growing home. A horehound, horseradish, you know, hyssop, lavender, lemon balm, lemongrass, which we call fever grass, lovage, we're going to marjoram again, Mexican oregano, Mexican tarragon. Tarragon is nice. Mint makes two of those leaves and you get a nice cup of tea. Motherworth, nettle, yes, nettle, same as stinging nettle. Oregano. Somebody wanted to see a picture of oregano. There it is. Parsley. Purslane. This grows like a weed in Trinidad. Purslane. A low growing plant. Okay. Rosemary. There's your rosemary. Somebody wanted to see a rosemary plant. I've seen rosemary grow successfully, yeah. Scented geranium, sorrel. I don't know how that came in there, but it's sorrel, tarragon, thyme, turmeric, which Trinidadians call saffron. It's not really saffron. Saffron of international trade is a pollen from a flower. Okay. There's yarrow. That's it. A to Z of herbs that we could be interested in. I will send you the link so that you can see it yourself. That brings me to the end of my sharing. I will stop sharing. And if we have any time, it's 1 minute to 8 o'clock. Coordinator, we'll take a question or two.
Before you move on, someone asked what's the name of the site? Did you say you're going to type it in the chat? Okay. Shadley Walters.
Yes, good evening. My question was, usually if I buy plants as seedlings, I will get them to grow, but if I try to plant them from the packages, they don't grow. I don't know if like insects eating them, I don't know, but I don't have much luck growing from the seeds that come in the packages. Any tips? I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Okay.
That's my question.
A lot of seeds that you find at the seed shops, they're too old. They would have lost their viability. That's one. Two, if the seeds are bought and not stored properly, like in a fridge, they lose the viability very quickly. Three, if it is seasoning herbs and those kinds of things, the insects would not normally eat them. They don't like the taste of this. And three, did I say three already? Four, if you put them too deep in the soil, remember the seed has the food that the plant will eat or use while it's germinating. So the size of the seed, which is the size of a grain of sugar, it doesn't have much food. So if you plant it too deep, it dies before it emerges. And that's why I say mix it with sand, make a little furrow in the soil, put it along the furrow, cover it, and do not wet too much. It must be wet and it must be warm. So it must be in the sunlight, it must have enough water, not too much water. Those are some tips you could try going forward.
Thank you.
Seeds take a lot longer than others. I could tell you, if you try germinating bandania seeds, which we call shadow benny, they take from 21 to 28 days to germinate. And depending, and you see, this is where a certain amount of exposure to biology is needed before you study agriculture. On these particular plant, where you have a particular structure for the seeds that are formed first are mature. When you harvest, you are harvesting both mature and immature seeds. So sometimes you plant 100, but there are only 10 of them that are mature in there. Seeds cost a lot of money because companies that are seed companies go with a reputation that what they give you should grow. and therefore they lose a lot of material in harvesting seeds. You also have to feed the plant properly so that the seed is properly matured and ready for germination. You know, a lot of what I'm talking here relates to what we do when we talk to people about the love of God. You know, we drop a few words on them and we feel, hey, I say enough here, it's time to give up with this person. If they're changed, that is their business. They have a hell waiting for them. They're too hardened. It's not that, you know. Some seeds take longer to germinate than others. Some plants require different conditions compared to others. And I want to crown this off by saying, Ellen G. White in her writing says, as you study agriculture and as you practice it, you will learn the ways of mankind. And you will understand the heart of man and how it operates. You will also understand how sin behaves and how you get a chance to convert a person from one way of life to a next. So this has more lessons than we could ever imagine, far beyond just doing agriculture. So I hope all of you enjoyed today's session.
One last question that I think will be important for everyone. Someone in the chat asks, is there any particular size container that you would like the assignment done in? Does it matter what size?
Nothing smaller than 1 gallon. If it is smaller than 1 gallon, when the plant gets to 6 months, you will have problems and you'll have to repot and you'll wonder what Brother Granger taught you to do, and if he didn't tell you all the right things, and you waste your time and your money. So, and I don't spend money on containers. I find containers. It's amazing. Somebody spoke about the gallon Clorox bottle. Yes, but make sure you soak it out for a week so all the remnants would be removed. Right? Use a container that is at least a gallon or so. Water bottles that are a gallon. Okay?
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our session for this evening. We thank all